from an incredible 2025 season where he won the championship.
The crowning glory here in Motegi is the comeback to top all comebacks, Marc Marquez.
To a crash that forced him to miss a third of the season.
Yes, that is it. Marc Marquez and Marco Bezzecchi.
And now being 7th in the championship with 3 DNFs after 5 races. This is what the fuck happened to Marc Marquez. But to truly understand the struggles of 2026, we have to look at some key moments that led up to today's mess. I mean, after just 2 years in Moto2, including a dominant 2012 where he won 9 races in the championship, he was promoted to Premier Class Racing for Repsol Honda alongside Danny Pedrosa. But here's the difference. Marc didn't take a season or two like most rookies to learn the tricks of the trade. He immediately won 6 races in the World Championship, becoming the first rookie since Kenny Roberts in 1978. And his dominance didn't stop. In 2014, he won the first 10 races in a row, winning the championship in 13 races by the end of the season. But in 2015, he looked human.
There's no way he's going to put it. Marquez has crashed yet again. He got him way too hot at the end of the back straight.
Only winning 5 races and finishing 3rd in the championship. Then came 2016. Marc again took 5 wins to win title number 3.
Marquez crosses the line. He wins here in Japan. He is the 2016 MotoGP World Champion.
In 2017, he took 6 wins and the championship, but by 2018, the dominance was back. I'm talking about 9 wins this time to win the title.
Marc Marquez masters Motegi. He is world champion in 2018. Take a bow, Marc Marquez.
And to cap it all off, he took a dominant 12 wins in 2019, winning 4 titles in a row and the biggest margin in Premier Class Racing history.
Quartararo up the inside. Marquez knows it's coming. He can't stop it. It's the comeback. The checkered flag is out. He's done it. He wins in Thailand, and he is the 8th-time world champion. What a rumble here in Buriram.
In less than a decade, Marc Marquez had won 6 Premier Class titles. Honestly, MotoGP felt a bit boring. Marc was untouchable, and he was on track to break every record ever created. And 2020 was gonna be that year. But coming into this season, the vibe was a little weird.
Outbreak of a mystery virus.
It's gonna get worse and worse and worse.
The world shut down, the season was delayed, everyone was on edge, and it showed in testing. He was still the heavy favourite. People weren't asking if he was going to win his 7th title. They were asking if he'd win it before flyaway races started. So we arrived at the season opener in July. Jerez. It was 40 degrees Celsius. The track was basically a furnace. This was supposed to be the coronation of the greatest to ever do it. The race starts, and Marc is doing Marc things. He is in the lead, heading into turn 4.
He's motocrossing. How about that? I did say it's only down to Marc Marquez to make a mistake.
A massive moment, but he saves it and rejoins in P16. It was the kind of moment that most riders would take and just settle for some points. But for 2020 Marc, this wasn't an option. And what followed was 15 minutes of the most beautiful racing you'll ever see.
Nicola Cuona with, there goes Marc right underneath Daniel.
Let's just wait and see what happens across his soul.
93 was embarrassing them. By lap 22, Marc was on the podium, breathing down the neck of Top Gun. He was pushing for that extra 1%. But the thing about riding at the absolute edge is that there's no safety net.
Oh, he's gone! He's gone! He said it! When he said it looked loose, and it was loose. He hurt himself.
Marc was launched into a brutal high side, slamming into the asphalt at almost 100 miles per hour. But the impact isn't the worst part. As he tumbled through the gravel trap, that 350-pound Honda flipped violently right behind him, and that front tire smashed directly into his right arm, completely shattering his right humerus. Instead of a coronation, we watched the greatest rider on the planet being loaded into an ambulance. Within 48 hours, he was on an operating table in Barcelona. It was one of the saddest sights in MotoGP, and no one even knew if he'd return. But while most humans would take a few months to recover, or even hit that subscribe button, Marc took 4 days. Just after surgery, he was already doing push-ups. He was literally in the paddock a week later trying to defy logic.
Marc, how are you feeling?
Not bad. We will see during these days.
He was back on track just 6 days after the surgery. But after a few laps, he pulled into the pits.
already coming straight into pits.
He was in too much pain, and even more damage was done. The stress of those laps had compromised the titanium in his arm. A few days later, while simply trying to open a large sliding door at his home, the plate snapped. This changed everything. He was rushed back into surgery. Then, a third surgery. Doctors discovered an infection in the bone that refused to heal. While the rest of the grid was fighting for the 2020 world title, Marc was stuck in a hospital bed. He didn't just miss a few races, he missed an entire year of development, and that is where the tragedy truly begins. Because while Marc was struggling in bed, Honda collapsed. Joan Mir went on to win the 2020 championship on his Suzuki.
Joan Mir is the world champion of 2020 in MotoGP.
Heading into 2021, news broke that Marc would return to Honda, but his doctors advised that he needed just a little more time for the arm to heal. So by the time Marc returned for the third race this season, everyone was hoping to see the king back at his best. But here's the problem. Ducati and Yamaha completely changed the game in the off-season, pushing the absolute limits of aerodynamics and ride height devices. The Honda RC21 3V had simply stood still. It was a brick that lacked any rear grip, and even though Marc tried to fight the bike in every corner, he only managed P7.
Marquez, after 9 months out of racing action, takes a very solid 7th place.
He continued pushing the bike to the absolute limit and kept crashing out. It was just your typical MotoGP slides, but number 93 was getting frustrated. By some miracle, he managed to keep his record at the Sachsenring intact by winning.
Year in a row, who would have predicted this? He can't believe it. Marc Marquez has won the German Grand Prix.
He wrestled the broken Honda to 2 more wins in Italy and the United States, and added a podium in Aragon to finish the season.
The Grand Prix of Aragon, Marc Marquez is beaten into 2nd place.
Ultimately, Quartararo would streak away to win the title.
But Fabio Quartararo, with 4th place, becomes the first French rider in history to win the MotoGP World Championship.
Heading into 2022, it was obvious Honda was deeply flawed, but Marc, being Marc, tried to override the machine with raw talent.
The Honda is back, and it's a Repsol Honda 1-2, and Marc Marquez in familiar territory, hard on the brakes.
He actually finished P5 in the season opener at Qatar, but heading into Mandalika, he once again pushed just 1% too much. The Honda once again snapped, launching Marc into a brutal high side. He walked away, but the damage was internal. The crash brought back his diplopia. And for a guy who lives at 220 miles per hour, this was a death sentence. But Marc didn't want to accept the reality. He tried to race the next 5 races, still fighting that Honda, but miraculously outscoring every other Honda-powered bike on the grid. Then we reached Mugello for round 8, and it happened again.
On the left shoulder, as Simon said, they're looking at the front tyre.
He wasn't injured, but he was suffering from incredible pain. Many expected that he was retiring, but he was heading to the Mayo Clinic in the United States for a 4th and final surgery. If this didn't work, there was no point in returning. And here is where it gets crazy. Surgeons literally had to cut his humerus in half and rotate it 30 degrees just to make his arm functional for motorcycle racing. And then, in an interview, Marc made a statement no one expected.
An realistic goal, speaking with the doctors, is try to race some race this year. Can be the last 2 races maybe, or the last race only in Valencia.
And for the last 6 races, it was incredible to see him back. He even got a podium in Australia.
Win the Australian Grand Prix. Marquez can't do anything. He takes 2nd.
But Pecco would complete the greatest comeback from 91 points down to win the title.
Pecco Bagnaia will be crowned 2022 MotoGP World Champion. One of the greatest comebacks in Grand Prix racing.
The rider was definitely healing, but the Honda was dying.
Fighting or wrestling that RC213V on this occasion at turn 8.
And right out of the gate in 2023, he proved it.
Oh, Marquez, a massive mistake. A big mistake. He cleared the back of Martin, then he hits the side.
In the season opener, Marc made a desperate dive bomb, locked the front tyre, and wiped out Miguel Oliveira. The result, broken bone, this time in his right hand. And another string of missed races. But the real breaking point, that came in June at the Sachsenring. You have to understand, the German Grand Prix was Marc's fortress. He had never lost a race here, and if there was anywhere on the calendar he could drag that miserable Honda to a victory, it was here. But instead, it was an absolute massacre.
3 World Champions Marquez. Oh no, he's tipped off.
That's that last corner, it's wetter than the rest of
In practice, in qualifying, in the warm-up, the bike was just randomly throwing him into the dirt with 0 warning. At one point, he suffered a tank slapper so vicious he literally flipped off the bike.
Oh, and it's Marquez has gone down again. Marc Marquez makes another mistake.
Marc finally hit his limit. For the first time in his legendary career, he voluntarily withdrew from a race. So during the summer break, Marc made a decision that shocked everyone. Left the Honda factory.
Life is sometimes you need to take a risk and give your or make a strong decisions is what I will do. And thanks to all my family, to all my team, and I want to say a big thanks to Alberto.
And went to the privately funded Gresini racing team. He posted a heartbreaking message to his team, saying the decision was guided by his head, not his heart. He was leaving to ride a year-old hand-me-down Ducati for the privateer Gresini racing team, and that set the stage for the biggest gamble in modern motorsport history. For the first time in his career, Marc wasn't the center of a billion-dollar corporate project. He was the guy in a small family-run team riding a bike that was already a year old. That smile told the world everything. Within 7 laps on a Ducati, he was already faster than he'd been on the Honda.
And on his Ducati debut, Marc Marquez goes into P1. They can't believe it, can they? Look at that nod of approval there.
But the 2024 season wasn't about the old win or wall mark.
He's getting some slipstream here, 350 on kilometers an hour. That was brilliant. A real positive, hugely encouraging Ducati debut.
I mean, Pecco and Jorge on the newer tech Ducatis were still dominating, but Marc came back to the podium. He took 10 podiums and 3 wins to finish P3 in the championship, and that performance forced Ducati's hand. They literally chose the battered veteran over the world champion. Marc was going to the Ducati factory, but that was just the start. Within 3 races on the GP25, everyone realized the number 93 was back.
128.782 though, thrown down by Marc Marquez.
He wasn't just managing as he did in 2024, he was hunting like he did in 2014. Marc went on a streak of dominance, winning 11 races for the season, with 7 of them in a row. By mid-season, the championship was essentially over, and with 5 races to go in Japan, he sealed it.
To land the crowning glory here in Motegi. It's the comeback to top all comebacks. Marc Marquez is the 2025 MotoGP World Champion.
But just as the fairy tale was reaching its absolute peak, reality delivered another brutal wake-up call. We arrived at the Indonesian Grand Prix. The 2025 title was already locked up, but Marc is physically incapable of just riding around to collect a paycheck. Bezzecchi took pole with Marquez on P9, but just as the race started, Bez had a bad start and fell back into the pack.
Underway we go. The Marco Bezzecchi's gained from pole position. Another shocking start. He's going backwards.
Meanwhile, Marc was steaming up the outside.
6 to second. The start of the sprint. Yes, that is it. It's Bezzecchi. It's Marc Marquez and Marco Bezzecchi. That's a massive, massive crash.
Marc went down hard. The Aprilia even clipped his right foot, and for a second, we wondered if he'd even get up. We wondered if this was 2020 all over again. And then the news broke. But this time, an older, more experienced Marquez stepped in because the championship was already won. Marc announced he'd sit out for the rest of the season. The question was whether he'd be 100% in time for the new season. Would he be able to sustain his 2025 form? Because Aprilia cracked the code to the RSGP, dominating the final few races of the season. Then Marc made it to pre-season testing. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. 93 was ready to defend his crown. Heading to Thailand for the season opener, Marc put the GP26 on the front row.
Weekend domination. Over the line, Marc goes into second. It was super tight. How close was that?
But in the race, he just kept falling back. Even the KTM of Acosta overtook him.
Immediately, he attacks Marc going through 8.
Before tragedy struck on lap 21 with a puncture.
What's happened here? Marc Marquez has run wide going into turn 4. He's got a problem. He's got a puncture. Marc Marquez. Well, that could have really been disastrous.
Then came Goiânia in Brazil. Marc was open with the media. He admitted the winter surgery hadn't been the magic fix he'd hoped for, but he won the sprint.
Spin on the rear tyre. The Gian Antonio shakes his head. He knows he blew it. It was a golden chance to take his first gold medal.
Managing P4 in the race, 8 seconds off the lead. It was damage control. Then we went to Texas, Marc's playground, the place where he usually embarrasses the field. But for the first time in a decade, Marc Marquez looked human at Cota. He struggled with the GP26's front end feel, complaining that he didn't trust the limit anymore. He finished P5. The king of Cota had been dethroned by the sheer stability of the Aprilia RSGP.
Crosses the line. The Bezzecchi blitz continues in MotoGP. He is your winner here.
By the time we reached Jerez, Marc was was already trailing Bezzecchi by over 35 points. He needed a statement win on home soil. He won the sprint in a display of pure grit.
Oh, that's going to be really, really close. Super aggressive by Marc on the inside of Bagnaia. He's out of the final corner to take victory in a truly sensational sprint here in Spain.
For a second, we thought the king was back, but Sunday was a different story.
It's lights out to a race to MotoGP here in the Spanish Grand Prix. What a start it is.
Despite a decent launch, Alex Marquez was on fire, carving through the field and eventually taking the lead.
Come back through. So this leading record is going to go, isn't it? Surely now. Marquez is trying to get on with business here very, very rapidly. On the inside he goes, brother Marc. He's levelling Marc on the brakes into the braking zone for turn 6.
While trying to recover, he pushed too hard.
Third in the field. Oh, Marquez has gone down! Marc Marquez has taken a huge tumble.
Another DNF, and in Le Mans, we got the answer. Heading into the French GP, everyone thought Marc's title defense was over. The Aprilias were dominating, and then he put the bike on pole by smashing the all-time lap record.
Marc Marquez back into P1.
But as the sprint kicked off, the GP26 once again failed at the start.
For the number 49 bike of Fabio Di Gianantonio, who's going backwards, was the whole shot device engaged there at all for Digia, as Marco Bezzecchi once again lining off the line on the factory.
Marc was fighting back, but with so much pressure, he was taking risks. He was pushing like he did on the Honda, and going into turn 14, the old Honda woe struck.
That's a mess as well. That's a real mess. Marc Marquez, well, he's had some massive crashes of late. The big crash in practice.
The paddock again held their breath for a second, but Marc got up. He walked away. The news broke that he'd undergo surgery the next day. This time, it was his right foot, while once again aggravating the shoulder injury. So what the fuck is happening to Marc Marquez? He has a solid bike. He's still got the talent, but in 2026, it just doesn't look like the same guy. And here is why. First, there's the Ducati GP26. Make no mistake, it is a rocket ship, but it has two fatal flaws that specifically hurt Marc's riding style. The launch control is a nightmare.
In the sprint in Le Mans, big wheelie off the line for the number 49 bike.
Then there's the front end. Marc has always made his living on the front tire, saving the impossible, but he simply doesn't trust the GP26. The front end feel isn't there, and when it lets go violently. Then there's the Aprilia RSGP. Aprilia literally built a monster. They are setting a pace that forces everyone else to override just to keep them in sight. But the most important thing, and something no one really wants to admit, is the fact that Marc Marquez is 33 years old. I mean, Marc actually admitted he'd have to retire sooner due to his injuries. There is also the issue with the diplopia, and while it seems to be fixed after the 2022 surgery, it could come back at any point. Sometimes it seems like he just doesn't have the power to turn the bike, and that's when he tries to force it. Basically, when you combine a stiff rider with a bike with a bad front end and the desperation of watching the Aprilias pull away, you get Le Mans. I should also mention his competitive spirit. Number 93 never races just for a paycheck. He keeps on pushing every single weekend. But after surgery in Madrid, Ducati already confirmed he is out of the upcoming Catalan GP. The only question is whether he can come back for the season and even defend his title. Right now, he is over 70 points down, missing races and facing a dominant Aprilia team. Mathematically, the 2026 season is a write-off. But Marc isn't a normal rider. If there's one man that can come back and win the title, it is number 93. And if Aprilia keep up the dominance, he might just be more than 100 points behind their leader. Marc will need to pull off another insane season to pull off the unthinkable. Marc has conquered almost every single race on the MotoGP calendar. He's won at every single track, except for India. If you want to know what a complete disaster the Indian Grand Prix turned out to be, check out this video. And as always, thanks for watching.